You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening, and may I say welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast. We're going to have to dive right into the news because things are breaking very, very, very quickly now. According to Nick Sordor, good friend of the show, independent journalist out in Minneapolis, Greg Bavino, head of he's the commander at large of U.S. Border Patrol, is reportedly he's reportedly been relieved of his command. So this follows, of course, the situation in Minneapolis, which is still developing regarding the shooting that resulted after the clash of Border Patrol, ICE, and Alex Prady, some of the individuals on the counter operation, the obstructionist side, that, according to several signal chats, not only includes protesters and those that are part of left-leaning activist groups, but also city council officials, as well as perhaps some of the staff in Governor Tim Walz's administration. This story is an absolute mess. So what we're going to do, very first thing, is give you the immediate updates that we have. Then we are going to break this down piece by piece, and we're going to cover all that we can in it. I do not promise to be perfect. I'm going to try to make it very clear when I'm giving you detailed news, when I'm giving you analysis, or when I am speculating and giving opinion. That's what I can promise at this point. So President Donald Trump has now reported that he spoke to Tim Walz. He said, I'm sending Tom Homan to Minnesota tonight. He's not been involved in that area, but he knows the likes of many people there. So the president of the United States gets up in front of the country and announces that he's sending Tom Homan to Minnesota. It's a huge shakeup. He also says that he spoke with Governor Tim Walz and then Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. So his take on Tim Walz. Governor Tim Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. The president says it was a very good call, and we actually seemed to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him, and that what we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession. That's very, very important. It is what all of this is about. The governor, respectfully, according to the president of the United States, understood that, and I will be speaking to him in the near future. He was happy that Tom Homan was going to Minnesota, and so am I. And then he said, we will have such tremendous success in D.C., and then he lists several other cities and also celebrates lower crime rates. The president also says that he spoke to Frey and that it was positive. According to Cameron Arcand, a good friend, over at the Daily Wire, he got a statement back from Governor Tim Walz. So attribute it to the office of Governor Tim Walz. Quote, Governor Walz had a productive call with the president earlier today. The governor made the case that we need impartial investigations of the Minneapolis shootings involving federal agents, and that we need to reduce the number of federal agents in Minnesota. According to Tim Walz's office, the president agreed that he would talk to his DHS, Department of Homeland Security, about ensuring the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is able to conduct an independent investigation, as would ordinarily be the case. The president also agreed to look into reducing the number of federal agents in Minnesota and working with the state in a more coordinated fashion on immigration enforcement regarding violent criminals. And then there's the second half where the governor's office does a little bit more posturing. The governor reminded Trump that the Minnesota Department of Corrections already honors federal detainers by notifying ICE when a person committed to its custody isn't a U.S. citizen. They then claim there is not a single documented case of the department's releasing someone from state prison without offering to ensure a smooth transfer of custody. So that's where things go a little bit askew in that particular claim, because the county offices, not just Minnesota State Prison, the county offices also detain a large number of individuals upon arrests, violence, sexual abuse, domestic abuse, etc., that are held and then released. This is something that has been a consistent complaint of Republicans in red and blue states, as well as independents in red and blue states, that in blue, predominantly blue cities and counties, you will have a prosecutor that will refuse to charge certain crimes, that will refuse to encourage local justices, judges, magistrates to uphold certain levels of prosecution and the law. And then they will allow individuals with certain federal law modifiers as in they may be more guilty of a federal law than a state statute, or the language might be different. They then release them from custody, usually under the guise and under the language of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's the line of posturing. Now, according to NBC News, they are pseudo-confirming Border Patrol Commander Greg Bavino expected to leave Minneapolis tomorrow. A White House and an administration official tell NBC News. Border Patrol is planning to reduce the number of its agents. That would be Border Patrol, USBP, who often assists ICE, not ICE itself, in Minneapolis sometime this week, officials say. All right, now we're going to get into why all of this is happening now. What are the parts, the pieces that go into this, and the shooting itself. So as a matter of transparency, Allison over on the WIBC board in Indianapolis, I am going to do my darndest to make sure that I have things bleeped out or volume lowered, but I would have my hand on the censor button just in case. So Alex Pretty, he is a former ICU nurse who participated in protests and obstruction of federal law enforcement, according to the information that we have. Right now in Minneapolis, after for an entire year, the Minneapolis city government, the Minnesota state government, and associative organizations like Treasury and financial offices, their medical offices, their supplemental nutrition assistance program offices, and so on, refused to work with the federal government regarding the status and the location of individuals who were in Minnesota illegally and had committed certain crimes that the Trump administration was targeting first. After that, the Trump administration sent in ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, into places like Minneapolis, and then sent in additional members of Immigration Customs Enforcement and U.S. Border Patrol after several incidents, including the exposure of large-scale Medicare and Medicaid fraud, and those arrests, the large Somali migrant community fraud situations, all of these kinds of fraud, and the responses to them were ramping up. So, how does Alex Pretty fit into this? This is an individual who was out in the street, not at a protest, but at an active ICE operation, who, according to video footage, warned an illegal immigrant that ICE was around. And so the individual could scuttle back into what appears to be a coffee shop and then hide. And then, according to the footage, and we're going to get to this particular footage and go through it piece by piece, he steps out into the road, and according to one side of the argument, he is obstructing traffic. And according to the other side of the argument, he's just gently directing traffic like a crossing guard. A very, very, normal process. Right off the bat, there's a problem. Number one, Alex Pretty, as the report made that he's just there, an illegal observer, was there because of information that was provided by a group of individuals who have made it a particular policy and priority to harass and obstruct Immigration Customs Enforcement operations in Minneapolis. That is why he was there. When he stood out in the middle of the road, he's not a crossing guard. He's not an individual in any official capacity. When he starts waving his arms in front of traffic, right in front of an arrest that appears to be taking place, and then individuals are shoved out of the way, it is, according to the footage, it appears to be that Pretty is knocked out of the street or moved out of the street, starts to approach other officers and individuals because he is obstructing traffic or attempting to wave traffic around. So, that aside, let's dive into this particular piece of footage. So, from the first angle, now we have two angles of the shooting itself. There is a third angle in which an individual inside the car, briefly swings their phone over for just a moment. And then there is footage that takes place directly after. And then there's a bunch of AI garbage that is flooding the internet right now. So, here is angle one. So, right off the front, individuals kind of moving around. You hear, of course, the sound of the whistles and the car horns. Those are like emergency come help me rape whistles that are just being blown all the time in Minneapolis. That does matter to this particular instance. Radio crew, sorry, we have to send you over to commercial. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. All right, continuing over here. So there's the whistling noises. Now, what you see, that individual right there is Alex Prady. So he goes out into the middle of the road to wave vehicles past some kind of U.S. Border Patrol arrest in process. This is by U.S. Border Patrol, who is assisting ICE, especially amid the violence that has occurred. That is federal policy. So it appears he's waving vehicles past.
Go.
So now he's sort of moving cars around. It's really unclear at this point. So originally he kind of stepped into the middle of the road to wave car. Now he's just kind of standing out in the dead center of the street, just waving his hands around. And now you will see the reason he wanted to do this is so that as the vehicle drives by, he then points his camera at the vehicle driving by. So again, the legal observer argument, he's not just waving traffic through. He's trying to take a gander at everyone who's in every single vehicle. And this is going to come up in a couple of minutes, but we'll continue the footage.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Okay, so after the car drives by and he puts his camera up to the window, not just directing traffic by, after he's in the face of the vehicle driving by the way, that is obstructing the road, is obstructing operations in the area. Then Border Patrol comes up and shoves one of the individuals who was not in shot out of the way. He then gets in front of the federal law enforcement officer and gets in his face over it. This would be the moment in which he is now participating. When you get in and say, hey man, you can't do that. That becomes the moment in which you obstruct federal law enforcement. Now, he is then sort of pepper sprayed. By that, I mean the guy pepper sprays, but he misses. Goes over his head. Attempted to pepper spray him. Now, one goes down. He then gets pepper sprayed right in the face. And then he is down on his hands and knees. Now, there's some draggling. There's some scuffling. There's some pretty physical moving around where individuals appear not to be just waiting on their knees, complying with federal law enforcement, but doing a lot of moving around. And it's not entirely clear as to whether he's just rather uncomfortable at getting pepper sprayed in the face, or he's resisting arrest, or he's continuing to obstruct.
The fuck, people! The fuck is wrong with you?
So again, you have the Karen in the background yelling, screaming, what the F is wrong with you? Because that is a huge portion of all of this. Now, the two individuals are separated. They are still struggling around. And there is what sounds like a federal officer shouting, get back, or gun. Then you hear 10 gunshots. Lying on the ground, Alex Prady has been killed. Okay, and then of course there's a lady in the background who's doing a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, etc. Okay, here's the second angle. Again, I'm just trying to go right through these. Here is the second angle of this scuffle. Now, you will already notice that this is not as close up as the other shot, but it is clearer. We're going to try to zoom in a bit. Those are the two angles that we have that include sound. There's another in a cafe. We're going to get to that. We got to bring the radio crew back. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. Don't go anywhere.
It's the Tony Kinnett cast on 93 WIPC.
All right, radio crew, welcome back from the commercial break. We are going through what occurred in the Alex Prady shooting play-by-play. And the reason we are going through this play-by-play is for three very important reasons. First of all, it is highly controversial. meaning that people are watching this and they are getting wildly different interpretations of what happened. Number two, the reason we are watching this is because I want to convey one thing to you after I have looked at these various angles in this particular altercation with the cops that resulted in Alex Pretty being shot by Border Patrol. The most important thing that I want to point out to you is that there are a lot of individuals doing the NCIS enhance, where they look at blurry photographs and videos and tell you, oh, there's a phone in his hand. Oh, there's a gun in his hand. And there's a lot of like really slowed down footage. Here's some slowed down footage. Slow it down. And then we get to little still shots of the footage. So that's reason number two that I want to show you these things. And then the third reason that I want to make these things very clear is because there are individuals right now that are making wild, insane, sweeping statements. And there are statements that are made by administration officials like Kristi Noem and Kash Patel and Greg Bavino. And then there are individuals over on the left like AOC and like Tim Walz and Jacob Fry and Ilhan Omar who have also made wildly outlandish statements. We're going to go through them. So the key assertion that is made by those over on the left side who are doing a lot of the close zoomed in speculation here is that he was carrying a firearm and then he was completely disarmed by federal law enforcement and then they shot him in a Gestapo style military execution. And there's the photo that's going around all over the internet. We're going to dig into it. It's got a lot of problems, mainly the first being that it's AI. And then there are those over on the right side of the aisle who are also making a pretty wild claim. So I want to go over to Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Here was how she characterized the event, what you just saw.
Individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently.
There is a lot in those two statements. From what we have so far, yes, it absolutely appears that Alex approached Border Patrol. However, the statement he approached them with a 9mm it's a bit of a stretch. The idea that he was approaching him, he had the firearm, he was going to go, he was going to rough him up. From the footage that we have of the incident, I'm not seeing exactly what it is that she's seeing here. But again, we'll get to some of the other footage here. She's got some other claims to make.
Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds.
We're going to get to the description of the weapon and the SIG and the rounds and how this is characterized in a second.
He also had no ID.
That's also another interesting and important point in this particular case.
Looks like a situation where an individual arrived at the scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
You do not know that. You don't know that. That is a bad statement. That is a bad statement objectively. Whether it's true or not, and it very well might be true, we're not going to know. It is there unless he left some kind of manifesto behind before he went out to obstruct law enforcement. It appears that he did show up to engage in what he can, like some protection. He was going to obstruct law enforcement in some way. There is no evidence right now that shows that he came there to shoot all of the Border Patrol officials. Now, none of that says anything about anything that he said being legal or justified or right. Absolutely not. But that is a problem. And that is a problem that clearly has rankled the Trump administration. We're going to get to that in a minute.
About hundreds of protesters then showed up at the scene. They began to obstruct and to assault law enforcement officers. We saw objects being thrown at them, including ice and other objects.
That is also correct. Now, the last time we had an incident like this, she described Renee Good, who had either attempted to commit vehicular homicide or it would have been in a situation where she would have been rightly charged with attempted vehicular manslaughter, trying to escape from federal officials attempting to make an arrest. She described Renee Good as a domestic terrorist right off the bat before any investigation was completed. Kristi Noem gets out in front of people, makes the same kind of statement. Greg Bavino, later on, the U.S. Border Patrol commander, made similar assertions.
You keep saying that he assaulted a federal officer, but again, we have not seen evidence that that happened. It looked like he was on the defense, and again,
that's not true. What Dana Bash asserts, what a lot of the media asserts, is that he was just standing there, a legal observer with his phone, and then Border Patrol came up to him, pushed him down onto his knees, and then shot him. That's not what has been asserted. He did get up and obstruct federal law enforcement. He put himself in that situation. Now, Kristi Noem, we're going to talk about Kash Patel in a second, then decided to make the case that he had showed up with a gun at a protest, a military-style gun with lots of rounds at a protest, and then started ascribing extra motive that was unnecessary. Bavino originally made some of the same assertions, but here with Bash, he then walks that back.
He had a gun legally. It sort of feels like we're in the upside down, where we have law enforcement and conservatives who are very pro Second Amendment saying the problem was that he had a gun.
Now, again, we'll get into this particular discussion about the Second Amendment, but that's the case that many on the left are going to try to make, and that many on the right, by the way, have been suckered into, is that he had a right to do everything that he was doing because he had a gun, and then the Department of Homeland Security asserted that he had a military-style gun, and they're saying that if you show up and you have a gun in your waistband, then therefore you are clearly there to do X, Y, and Z.
Legally.
No, the problem is, as I said several times now, is he injected himself. He put himself where he did not need to be. He put himself in and put law enforcement officers in jeopardy through his actions.
Those are fairly accurate statements. I say fairly because we don't know yet, not because I doubt what he's saying here. We don't know all of the ins and outs of this particular incident. We don't. Despite the 2 or 3 blurry videos which have been shared, we do not know everything there is about this. We don't. And so making the assertion that he was totally justified and absolutely, did he have a legal right to carry a firearm in the United States? You do have a legal right to carry a firearm. There are some questions about ID in Minnesota state law. But the case that needs to be made is he was obstructing law enforcement if you are making the case that the officers reacted in self-defense.
These were his actions, not law enforcement officers' action. We had to react to an individual that came there for a specific reason. And again, what that reason is, we're going to find more out about that in the coming days. I'll be interested to see what his reason for being there, while Border Patrol agents were arresting a violent criminal illegal alien doing their lawful, ethical, and moral duties in Minneapolis.
Those things are true. The statements that were made by individuals like FBI head Kash Patel, a little more of a struggle.
Thousands of people are marching through Minneapolis. They are targeting the Border Patrol. It feels like the rhetoric and the protesting is only ramping up. What is your advice to the people right now who are outraged that this is a second killing at the hands of Border Patrol in 2 weeks?
As Kristi said, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't.
No, it's not. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. According to federal law, the U.S. Constitution, and Minnesota state law, yes, you can. You can bring a firearm to a protest fully loaded with as many magazines as you want. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. 2 magazines is not unreasonable. Again, none of this is to say that Alex's actions were appropriate. None of this was to say that by obstructing federal officials, he didn't put his own life at risk. None of this is to say any of that yet, but on the very bare minimum, when you are describing a developing situation to the American people, and you get out there and say, you're not allowed to bring a gun to a protest, I'm sorry, that is wrong. Incorrect. Shut your mouth. Quit saying things that make it harder for the administration to carry out an investigation later because they have to cope with uninformed, wrong statements.
Don't have that right to break the law and incite violence. We will, of course, always protect your First Amendment speech. And if you peacefully protest, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you have seen a trend here, not just in Minnesota, but across the country, in these protests turning into violent scenarios and people attacking law enforcement. That's when you go over the line, and that's when law enforcement steps in.
That's correct. Now, that's absolutely correct. The minute that you obstruct federal law enforcement, that you get up in law enforcement's face, then yes, federal law enforcement has the right and the duty to disarm you. Absolutely. Because once you violate the law, once you break the law, you forfeit your right to freedom from incarceration. Once you start breaking the law, you forfeit your right to move around however you please in the First and Second Amendments. Now, we're going to swing the radio crew over to commercial, going to cover a little bit more on this on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. I understand that a little of this is rough because it is a bit of a struggle to get through some of these details and point out that every word in these developing situations deeply, deeply matters. And that as things come out, it's more important than ever before, more important to make sure that you have the right information and that you haven't said things going into that are going to cause you later grief. Now, on the flip side, again, we'll talk about kind of the in-depth look. There is a particular analysis that I prefer, I think is probably one of the best, making the case of what happened, this particular huddle, what actually appears to have occurred. Now, there is a super chat from Catherine that I do want to address. Catherine X 1982, very kind. Says, I may be wrong, but Minnesota state law, it says you cannot bring a weapon to a protest. So, according to Minnesota state law, there is no particular statute that I have found yet. I'm gonna make sure that I pull this up. Minnesota statute section 609.71. It says carrying a weapon or firearm to a riot is illegal, but peaceful protests don't qualify as riots. Now, here's the question. When does this become a riot? That actually matters. This is something the American people have been skirting for quite a long time. And again, there's also a question as to whether or not he was carrying his ID, because if you're not carrying your ID in Minnesota, very illegal to be carrying a firearm. So there are some additional details that matter. However, those two things are not what was stated right away. Kash Patel falsely said, incorrectly stated, that you cannot bring a firearm to a protest. Not true. Protest? Yes. Riot? No. Again, it matters. It does matter here. The context is important. Now, do I believe that a lot of these have been and are riots? Absolutely. Absolutely. But you need a cool, calm, collected head of law enforcement, may I suggest like a Tom Homan, to make sure these things don't spiral out of control and not get in front of the public and make really ridiculous statements. No statements were more ridiculous than those made by Governor Tim Walz, who is already under investigation for possible complicity in the conspiracy to defraud the American people and aid the fraud situations, up to $18 billion of fraud in various programs that was going on in the state of Minnesota and is still going on in the state of Minnesota. Number two, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is also under federal investigation for conspiracy to obstruct federal law enforcement. He then gets up in front of the American people and issues a very, very irresponsible statement. So the first question to the governor is, have you activated the National Guard? Here's the governor's response.
Yes, the answer is yes, we have, as we said last week, and we staged those troops. I'll have General Menke talk about where they're at, and again, use this as an opportunity to stress to Minnesotans the frustration you have, and as you saw this, they killed a man, created chaos, pushed down protesters, threw gas indiscriminately, and then left the scene, and then we're left to clean up. I understand the anger. I understand trying to parse who were the law enforcement on the scene when you got there after a man was killed is difficult for the folks who are out there. But I can't stress enough, our goal, and I'll have General Menke talk about what the role of these Guard troops are in conjunction with incredible work from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, from mutual aid across, and of course the State Patrol.
Welcome back to the radio crew. Sorry, don't have enough time to do a bumper out to swing you guys back in. Governor Tim Walz gets in front of the American people following the death of Alex Priddy, after he obstructed law enforcement, and there was a great deal of confusion about the circumstances surrounding the discharge of the firearm that led to 9 additional shots that resulted in him being shot. Okay, we don't have the coroner report of how many of those shots hit him, but up to 10 times, likely around 9. Governor Tim Walz gets up and announces that he has deployed the National Guard. The National Guard, as we'd covered previously, put on these neon green vests with the suggestion that they were going to be differentiated. They passed out donuts and coffee to the protesters and stood out as a different kind of federal law enforcement, because that's what the National Guard is, a wing of federal law enforcement, from the federal law enforcement that was deployed on the scene.
Of trying to get to the point where what we're saying is we can handle this and Minnesotans can express their First Amendment rights and have our folks on the streets and get these people out of here. And so, John, if you
get these people out of here. That, again, is a very, very problematic statement. Walz coming right out and making it clear that the goal of the National Guard being deployed right away, the goal of the National Guard being deployed is that the people of Minnesota need to see other federal law enforcement, like federal law enforcement needs to be removed. Big mistake. Now, then he makes 2 very, very, very bad mistakes. Mistake number 1, he says, quit calling these ICE immigration customs enforcement, quit calling them law enforcement. They are not law enforcement. That's not true. They are law enforcement. It has been upheld by Supreme Court precedent. It has been upheld by numerous state and federal cases. Federal law enforcement includes immigration and customs enforcement and U.S. Border Patrol. Again, sorry to push things later on into the show, but we're going to get into one of the key issues of this entire outrage over this particular incident is suggesting that ICE was the ones who shot Alex Pretty. That's not true. That's not true at all. But people are going to continue repeating it. So then Tim Walz announces, very, very poor decision, that Minnesota illegal immigrant children, this is just like Anne Frank in the Holocaust.
We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota. And there's one person who can end this now.
Yes, absolutely. There is one person who can end this now. It would be Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. It would be Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. By agreeing, just like Texas, just like Florida, just like dozens of other states around the country, to work to cooperate with federal law enforcement. None of this was necessary. And for an entire year, the Trump administration waited for you to get around to finally working with federal law enforcement. You said no. So at that point, there were 2 different things that the federal government could do. Either number 1, it could cut off all funding into the state, which it sort of attempted to do. Federal judges swooped in and said, nuh-uh, the money has to come in no matter what. Or number 2, you could go in with federal law enforcement and you could take care of it yourself. And it was stated proudly from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, from Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, again, who we're going to get to in a minute. His statement was somehow even worse. Or also Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. You could have those individuals who work with federal law enforcement. Instead, what they chose to do, those 3, was state no law enforcement in Minnesota would ever work with ICE or anyone in the federal government or federal law enforcement. And so they went in anyway. And what you got, according to a series of investigations by Cam Higbee, independent journalist and a very good one at that, are Minnesota officials at the local and state level, including a member of Tim Walz, it looks like his campaign team, who started coordinating with Antifa, a domestic terrorist organization in the United States, who started coordinating with individuals to dox federal law enforcement, to leak what they believed were license plate numbers, hotels that the ICE and Border Patrol agents were staying at, and the crowd responded appropriately. So immediately after the shooting of Alex Pretty, what we got was, of course, large number of people showing up and chanting the normal things that one would expect in this kind of incident. Huge crowd. Very huge crowd. And then you got to the nighttime hours. Now, it was very, very cold in Minneapolis. And the people that showed up, there was a large number of people in the country that were waiting to see how quickly things would turn violent because it was very, very, very cold. And the answer was it took very little time at all. So one of the first things that occurred near the site of the shooting, there was an autonomous zone that was set up where no law enforcement was allowed in, and they were all going to stand there. They had their French Revolution barricade set up. It included garbage cans, a pallet, and then on the inside you had some people standing around burning trash, chanting angry things. Now, I am only showing you the best footage that I have on this particular stuff because most of it was shot on a potato filmed by a recorder with Parkinson's and ADHD. It was very hard to get a lot of footage out of Minneapolis, believe it or not, with all of the cameras and legal observing going on. And then about a half an hour after that video was uploaded, we got to smashing stuff. So there was a, was it a DoubleTree hotel, I believe? You had people showing up. No, it was a Home and Suites. Smashing the hotel's marquee because there were suspected ICE agents inside. Now again, you will notice I said it was suspected there were ICE agents inside. ICE was not even the group responsible for firing the shots that killed Alex Pretty. It was U.S. Border Patrol. But that doesn't matter. This signal chat encouraged, again, in which Minnesota local and state lawmakers appear to have participated in, encouraged people to show up to commit all kinds of violence, vandalism. These aren't even vehicles, by the way. This Indiana vehicle, for instance, has already been shown not to be an ICE or Border Patrol vehicle at all, just a destroyed vehicle of a Hoosier. Again, I know this might be shocking to you. People who stay at hotels are often from out of state. You know, kind of a cool concept there. People also attempted to enter the hotel itself. Finally, in the evening, there was one guy left to kind of guard the entrance of the building. And he was heard asking, like, where's the local police? There are violent crowds outside that are attempting to enter the premises of the hotel. And I'm guessing not hug and kiss the individuals inside. It is a reasonable assertion that they might commit very serious acts of violence. Now, by the way, again, according to Minnesota state law, if you showed up to that hotel bashing with a loaded firearm, yes, that would be a violation of Minnesota state law. Correct. Now, we're going to get into some of the outcry from this and some of the analysis as well. Radio crew, we have to send you guys off to commercial. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, I want to play one particular clip that I haven't had a chance to play just yet. This is an analysis, I might say, from an account that I've followed for some time. His name is Landure over on the social media spheres. And he shows a slowed down video of what appears to occur. So he says, in the huddle, when Alex Pretty is obstructing law enforcement and the Border Patrol agents have convened on the scuffle and are now starting to, again, he's been pepper sprayed, and they are now attempting to put him on the ground and search his person, which is law enforcement standard practice. You have him on the ground. Is he armed? Is he carrying a knife, a gun? He has obstructed law enforcement. Now he no longer has a right to the firearm that he is carrying. Does this mean the officers are in danger at this point? Not necessarily beyond the current obstruction. Again, the reasonable measure of force. Now, at this point, by obstructing law enforcement, has Pretty already put himself in a very dangerous situation he didn't have to be in? Absolutely. So, in those moments that you just saw, we're going to slow it down and walk through what appears to be the most logical explanation here. So here's the speed up footage, or the normal speed footage. Now, we're going to slow it down. So, right here, in this frame, you can see a Border Patrol agent who appears to have disarmed Alex Pretty of the Sig Sauer pistol that he was carrying, and is carrying it away. Now, I don't know, and you don't know right now, if that is absolutely for sure 100% that pistol, or the Border Patrol agent is holding his own pistol in a very poor manner and walking away. But right now, it looks like the most reasonable explanation, they've disarmed him, and then he starts to walk away. He swings it back. And Landra points out with the classic red circle, the slide is visibly to the rear of the SIG. So it could be that the first thing that the officer did is, this is the stupid part about YouTube not allowing guns on for no reason at all. When you rack the slide of the gun back, and there may be a round in the chamber still, held loosely, because I hate SIGs. If you're looking for someone to defend SIG handguns, I'm not the guy for you. And then when he swings forward, it appears there is a chance. I'm very much speculating. I'm just telling you this is what I believe to be the best explanation so far. We don't know. As he swings it forward, that the slide of the SIG swings forward as well due to the momentum, because again, SIGs are known for misfiring. And that leads to the very first shot. Now, here's the problem. The first shots are one right after another. So, what do all this have to mean? Essentially, what we know is that there is an officer who shouts gun, a Border Patrol agent who shouts gun, and then theoretically, again, you have to speculate because we don't have footage of them reaching into the dude's pants and pulling out the firearm. From what it appears, they pull out the firearm, rack the slide. As they do so, the SIG then misfires. A round left in the chamber misfires. And then, as soon as the other officers, which heard gun and then one shot going off, then reacts by believing that the guy had a gun on him, was pulling it at the officers, and then discharged his gun several times. That is an analysis that I believe is fairly reasonable. We've got to bring the radio crew back one more time for commercial. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, national syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Now, I'm going to level with you here. There are a lot of different opinions out there about this particular incident, about what could have happened, about what did happen. Again, I just shared what I believe is probably the most reasonable theory right now. There are a couple of SIG owners in the comments who are very unhappy. I'm sorry, I carry an H&K. Can't be much help to you there. But in this particular instance, I think the best code of action, the best course for people right now in this particular instance, the best course of action is to wait for an investigation to be concluded, to wait for an actual moment where we are very well aware of what has occurred based on law enforcement diving into some of the details. Now, is this what many on the left and right decided to do immediately? Absolutely not. First and foremost, you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez getting out in front of the country announcing we're going to shut the government down over this. Stupid move.
But again, Democrats do have the ability. There are 10, Republicans do need 10 Democratic votes in the United States Senate to pass continued unfettered ICE voting with no guardrails as it stands. And I think that regardless of where you are in the Democratic Party, this moment and this incident proves that the status quo cannot stand. And I would implore my Democratic colleagues in the Senate to vote no against maintaining this DHS funding as it stands. I think if you are an everyday person, what is happening right now is that there is an environment of political intimidation at play. They don't want us to use our First Amendment rights. They don't want us to exercise our freedom of assembly or freedom of speech. They want to they want to make sure that we are afraid to act as people, as employers, as a free nation.
Now we get to the gaslighting. The gaslighting right away, and not only from AOC, but from people like Adam Schiff getting out and saying they're going to shut it down, not another dollar, not another dime. The House has passed the funding. It now goes into the Senate. And now the Senate has an opportunity through people like Chuck Schumer, who has suggested that they are not going to vote for funding for immigration customs enforcement at all. Meaning that if Republicans can't get the bill through, there wouldn't be cloture, then Republicans would either have to nuke the filibuster or the government shutdown would be, again, shut down again by Democrats. So here would be Adam Schiff saying that he's not going to vote in favor of funding the Department of Homeland Security.
If Democrats vote against this DHS funding measure, my question for you, Senator, are you prepared to vote against DHS funding if it means partially shutting down the government? Again, coming on the heels of an incredibly long shutdown.
Well, I'm not giving ICE or Border Patrol another dime.
Quite a move. Quite a move. Now, this seems to be what a lot of those on the left have settled into. Carolyn Leavitt did respond to the threat to shut the government down a little bit later in the day.
Is the administration willing to separate DHS funding from other funding bills in order to avoid a broader shutdown?
Look, at this point, the White House supports the bipartisan work that was done to advance the bipartisan appropriations package, and we want to see that passed. Policy discussions on immigration in Minnesota are happening. Look, the president is leading those discussions, as evidenced by his correspondence with Governor Walz this morning, but that should not be at the expense of government funding for the American people.
That's correct. That's correct. The best lesson to learn from absolutely all of this, and this is the entire key lesson to learn. Obstructing federal law enforcement is wrong, it is illegal, and it is going to put you very, very likely, in a very rough position. A super chat that came in $2 says, look at Andrew Barca's videos. I agree. Very, very good take. I have a kind of a final take here that I'll share kind of on that summary here in a couple of minutes. The most important lesson to learn out of all of this, if state governments work with federal law enforcement, things will largely turn out fine. The more pressure you put on any situation with federal law enforcement, where you have entire groups that are coordinating to obstruct, to violate the law, to harass at every single moment, and you gaslight by pretending it's legal observance or whatever, you are going to get situations in which people end up dead, regardless or not of whether they intended to go in there and shoot up a bunch of people or drive over ICE agents. When you are told via blind love and affirmation that you need to get in there and obstruct law enforcement because you need to protect children from becoming Anne Frank, you are going to be put in situations in which you forfeit your right to safety. You do. And now everyone's like, well, we got to have an investigation. Guys, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a secret. The investigation may not reveal all that much. That's the rough part about these particular instances. It is. That's why the best and the first and foremost thing to do is limit the number of these situations. Coordinated networks where you drive around town, all over town, to track down ICE agents as though you're gonna scope them out and find them and catch them, that kind of stuff. Like, you're not even seeing people following around actual federal law enforcement. Completely different people are being followed around. One particular moment from today that was, I mean, just at least for me, especially gross. This would be the video next to the auto zone, so I'm keeping an eye on the radio clock as well. People that are following other individuals around because the crew in the SUV believes they are ICE. And when they're like, we're just people. We're just out trying to go about our business. You now have these Karens that are stopping in front of the vehicle that are honking. And it doesn't matter. You now have what are essentially these pseudo vigilante acts that are going to be carried out until there's more violence, until there's more shootings. Because misunderstandings, because people who are messaging, I just saw ICE. These are the same people who get on Facebook and go, anybody hear an explosion in town? The same people. Social media and the rumors that spread from it are not a substitute for an actual effective manner of carrying out investigations, not effective for carrying out the hindering of operations. Now, you can share things to social media, absolutely, and then you can amplify things to social media, 100%. But just going off of some post and saying, oh, this is true, I believe it, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to stop them. This is where you get people into extremely violent and dangerous circumstances. As one comment put it, TikTok educated politics. Well said. Well put. Radio crew, we have to send you to the commercial and then, or not to commercial, to the end of show for y'all. We're going to continue over on the live stream side of things. I recognize it's just a smidge early. YouTube.com/Daily Signal, Rumble.com/The Daily Signal. That's the place to watch the rest of us. We're going to get into some of the probably less FCC air appropriate footage at the moment. So check out stuff with us over there. We have a lot more news to cover. It's going to be a good one. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right. Now, I want to very, very quickly, I want to play a response from Senator Fetterman, who is starting to cool down just a little bit on some immigration stuff, and then Andy Beshear of Kentucky. Then we're going to get into the extra stupid stuff. To be fair, Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky, is some extra stupid stuff. But before that, here's Fetterman.
I mean, so relieved. I think my party crossed a line of now putting 42 million Americans with their SNAP benefits and making flying less safe and that kinds of chaos and not paying our military. I mean, that was a red line for me that I can't cross as a Democrat. And I think that's been described country over the party. And now that I think that's been the truth throughout it, and it's only wrong to shut our government down. And I'm relieved. But the people now that are going to get paid and fed and millions of Americans, they're going to be flying now. That's going to be made more safe and restored.
All right. So we currently have conflicting reports, and I want to make sure that we get this answered correctly. So first of all, Fetterman has released a statement now, again, saying that both Renee Good and Alex Petrie, they should be alive. He's trying to really straddle a fine line here without pissing off too many people on the left. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. The outcome over the last week of Alex Petrie getting shot, of Renee Good getting shot, and the violence that is now coming out of that has always been in the playbook. It has always been in consideration. The idea of throwing bodies in front of ICE agents that are making arrests, Border Patrol agents, federal law enforcement that are making arrests, and then suggesting that, oh, that's going to be fine and it'll all be shucksy doodles because in America nothing happens and you can body slam a cop and that'll totally be cool. Nope. People with enough common sense to understand that's where it will go, they know that. There are some that are just heartless enough to say, yeah, get out there, throw yourself at ICE officers, who cares? Bad decision. So, according to a CNN correspondent, Priscilla Alvarez, she has suggested that Bavino, again, of Gregory Bavino, Border Patrol, that his social media accounts have been suspended or his access to them has been suspended. But Tricia McLaughlin, one of the spokespersons for the Department of Homeland Security, says that Bavino has not been relieved of his duties at all. He's a key part of the president's team, great American. We kind of don't know what's going on right now. So hang on just a minute. People don't know yet whether he's been relieved or he hasn't been relieved. Give it a minute. What we do know is that Tom Homan is going in. Tom Homan is going into the fray. This is a good thing. Now, we've talked about this a little bit before with Oversight Project's Mike Howell. According to the Washington Examiner, there is a major schism right now inside the Department of Homeland Security. And this is a schism between individuals like Secretary Kristi Noem and then Corey Lewandowski, a special employee at DHS, and Tom Homan and a bunch of senior law enforcement officials. Essentially, this schism boils down to an argument over how law enforcement is conducted. The Homan crew seems to assert that Noam gets out in front of the podium, makes a bunch of perhaps ill-advised statements, and then heads out and just kind of does a lot of flashy stuff. And there are accusations that Bavino does some of the same things. The counter argument to that on the other side is that Homan, well, you know, maybe he's really shady. Maybe he took a bribe. He's not trustworthy. Maybe he just wants to be in charge. This is not conducive to actually getting things done. Americans, by the polling data, what they want out of a law enforcement agency is someone to come into the room, to be very serious, not to be goofing around, not to be making jokes, not to be making quips for law enforcement. For the president, the vice president, that's something different. That's more of a political angle. But when you're talking about law enforcement themselves, they come in, they say, here's going to be how things go. Here's what we're going to do. Here are going to be the consequences. Do you have any statement on this? Not until the investigation's finished. That's what you do. That's what Tom Homan does. Americans appear to respond to that better than statements that are made by Kristi Noem and Kash Patel. That is just an assessment of things currently on the ground. Now, other individuals are starting to chime in, suggesting from the sources cited by the New York Post, for example, that this was an accidental discharge that started the gunshots in this particular instance. Since then, since this particular shooting, we have had additional violence all over. I said earlier, Keith Ellison, Attorney General from Minnesota, he got out and said some really, really ill-advised things. Again, I would really, if you're an official in any capacity right now, shutting up and saying, I'm going to wait for more information really appears to be the best move that you could do. Regardless, here's Keith Ellison running his mouth.
Hello, Minnesota. We are 8 weeks into the unlawful federal occupation of our state, and we are beyond outraged.
Not unlawful, not an occupation. Right off the top of the bat, top law enforcement officer in Minnesota has no idea what the law is. Very bad start to a very bad statement.
But I'm not afraid, and I'm not tired. Neither are my fellow neighbors. This past weekend, there was a third shooting involving a federal immigration agent and the second fatal one. Alex Preddy, an intensive care nurse at the Minneapolis VA, an employee of the federal government and a proud union member, described by his coworkers as the first person who would jump in to help.
Immediately, the immediate lionizing before any additional information is known, any at all, it's a bad decision. It's a bad decision. You don't have to do it. You don't have to. Now, in the media, we build our entire brand on getting the first scoop out, telling you right away, here's what this person says. You can just tell them no and say, I'm going to wait a second. Kind of a charged situation, kind of controversial. Going to just wait a brief moment here.
He was our neighbor, and he should still be with us, as should Renee Good, a mother and poet who we lost too soon.
Now, here's the hard and really rough truth that people do need to come to terms with. Renee Good and Alex Preddy had the ability to still be with us. They chose to throw away that ability to still be with us. Renee Good chose to be in that situation. She chose to take the advice of her wife and gun it when told to step out of the vehicle after she had obstructed the street. After Alex Preddy obstructed the street, got all up in a passing vehicle, and then tried to obstruct law enforcement officers, continued to resist arrest. He put himself in that situation, regardless of whether or not the shots that were discharged were justified. When you resist arrest, you take those chances into your own hands. They have the authority, they have the ability to be still with us. The only citizens that are being arrested or hurt right now by Immigration Customs Enforcement and Border Patrol are those who obstruct federal law enforcement, period. Now, we can talk about the messaging behind it. We can talk about everything else. Right now, you play the Darwin game, you might win. Don't make bad choices. Not a difficult thing to say. Now, speaking of bad choices, we talked about this with the media. I do need to get into this. The AI nonsense and the women on Instagram. So there are two things that have now become hand in hand after any kind of a controversy, any kind of a tragedy. These would be, first of all, AI photos. For example, this particular photo right here. We're going to get into it. And then the posts made from all of the George Floyd Instagrammers. People who have seen footage, whether it's real, whether it's fake, whether it's edited, whether it's blurred, whether it's AI enhanced and then puts different things in people's hands that weren't there before. And they start, you know what we need? I need to get out there. I need to say something. I got to make a statement. I got to call everyone else to make a statement. Quick, somebody, we got to get an influencer's opinion out here. And we started getting this kind of crap all over the internet, just like George Floyd. Here you go.
I'm like so behind because I thought we were still into like thou shalt not murder and like being hands down for a man that was murdered by the state.
You'll notice that she shares that particular photo, this particular photo to be precise, which we're going to look at in just a second.
Some legendary hits like thou shalt not murder. But I guess it's different when somebody does something that you're not agreeing with because you're like a huge fan of the other people.
All right, so there's a guy snoring in the background, which is kind of weird. All right, there is a wild take that comes out in comment sections and videos by influencers right now. How can you just say comply? You just like fascism. Clearly, it's just murder and fascism. You can hear their heart rate going up and up and up and up. You do not have a right to obstruct federal law enforcement. You don't. You don't. You can claim all you want, up and down, all day long. You don't have a right to interfere with an arrest. You just don't. Nope. There is no constitutional right that says if you don't like the arrest, you can shove your body in there and make it better. Nope. And then when you get out there and go, oh, it was murder. Oh, it was the Gestapo. Oh, Hitler. Nope, nope, nope. It's not true. And when you get out and you share AI edited photos with it, that makes it worse. So here's the photo that's the big super duper ultra photo. And it looks bad, doesn't it? Wow, they're doing the kill shot execution. This nice guy right here, hand down. Oh, and then you can see, again, this crystal clear photo. You can see the officer pointing the gun at him as he's kneeling there. Wow, that's a damning photo. I bet there's literally a former Special Forces commander who has spent the day tweeting this photo out all day. A New York Times correspondent also tried to discuss this photo all day. There's just one problem. The problem with this particular photo, if you'll look with me here for just a second, notice that the officer in the blue sweatshirt has two small anatomical issues. First of all, he has no head. Not like he's lost his head, not like he's acting without his head. I mean, literally, in the photo, there is no head here. Number two, his right arm is growing out of his boobs. Now, I don't know if you know anything about human anatomy, but if you're, the shoulder bone's connected to the arm bone's connected to the nipples. Nope, not how the song goes, Jim. Nope. It's an AI photo. Yet all of the white women on Instagram, oh, I have to get out there and let somebody know how I feel. And if you dare question it, then I'm not joking. The bowl cut liberals will come out in full force to complain. So again, white blank page. So first of all, you have the trend that came back today of people recording themselves sad. I really enjoy this trend whenever someone does it, because you get yourself worked up and go, oh my gosh, I'm really, really upset. I got to record this so people see how upset I am. So she's staring at her Instapot and she's sad, and then the headlines are going to pop up on the screen. So ABC News, all of these. 2025 was ICE's deadliest year in 2 decades. Here are the 32 people who died in custody. Oh, she's so upset. ICE shooting reinforces Minnesota's grim role as Trump's target. That's not a straight news headline at all. At all. But anyway, again, working ourselves up, looking to the sky in front of our Instapot. There we go. Now, apparently, according to this individual, People saw this who normally tune in to see her, I don't know, I'm cooking, I'm guessing, because of the Instapot recipes maybe. And people said, hey, I don't tune into you for your political takes. There's a really gorgeous man with a beard and glasses and a great taste in thrifted blazers. A Hoosier of the highest quality over on the live streams, radio and TV. I go to him for politics. I don't come to you, the Instapot recipitarian, for takes on Border Patrol and immigration customs enforcement. And you know who that outraged? That people said, I'm good, no thanks. It outraged the bowl cut Karens of the left.
There are so many influencers on this app and over on TikTok and everywhere that they're selling their makeup and they're doing all their stuff. And they're not speaking out and they're not saying anything. This creator did. This influencer did.
Wow. There's so many people not speaking up. Guys, it's Monday. It is the 26th, the shooting from two really grainy angles and then one slightly clearer angle from a cafe across the street behind the window that still doesn't show everything clearly. Those are the three angles of this shooting. People don't know everything yet. And so there are a lot of people out there on the left and the right. I just talked to an individual left-wing commentator today. I asked him how he felt about this. He said, well, obviously I'm upset seeing a lot of this stuff. I said, are you going to talk about it? He said, no, I don't know enough about it yet. What a surprise. What a concept. But if you don't get out there right now, this is that Jennifer Welch thing. You don't get out there and say, it's good that Charlie Kirk was dead. We're coming for you. You can have some bodies embarrassed to be their grandmother. Get out there and make excuse. She had the courage to stand.
Speaking out and they're not saying anything. This creator did.
Oh,
this
great.
Influencer did. People are super mad in her comments.
Yeah. Maybe controversial things cause controversy. Breaking. Amazing. Just crazy ideas.
At her, spewing out all the disinformation that they have been taken in from the bubbles that they consume their news from.
People are spewing disinformation from all the bubbles of their disinformation. Every one of the headlines from that young lady were from ABC News. Every one of them. Not a single secondary, tertiary news source there.
But she had the courage to speak out. And for that, I'm following her everywhere I see her.
You probably should get like a candle, like a Catholic saints candle for her. Maybe a yard sign. In this house, we follow the really sad crockpot lady.
Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Reels, anywhere I see and I don't have a follow, I follow her. Because she has courage that a lot of these people do not have. Or they're with it. And they...
Stunning, brave, menopausal, exciting. Wow. Just incredible. I for one am absolutely thrilled. By the way, I just want to shout out to my parents for not raising me like that. I'm not. By the way, just to be clear, when this event started to happen, I got a very kind message from a family member that said, hey, don't talk about this when you wait for just a minute. Wait for some of the stuff. And I said, yeah, that's how I was raised. And they agreed. Just hang on a second. It'll be okay. It'll still be a news story in a couple of days. Now, then you have people that get on to, all of the media shows and say the dumbest of dumb things. So here's the Nazi comparison again. This is on Jake Tapper's show with his guest.
I understand that, but they take people to Fort Snelling here, which literally was built as a concentration camp, and Alligator Alcatraz, which I think we can all agree is a concentration camp. Not saying they're Dachau. I'm not saying they're putting people in ovens yet. But these are concentration camps.
Okay.
I don't need to argue with you about
that.
The man in the pink vagina hat, when Jake Tapper is like, yeah, you can't, like, they're not putting people into ovens yet. I do appreciate Jake's like, whoa, hey, whoa. You encourage this. When you get out there and you use the language, when you make the statements that are enshrined around their Nazis, their Gestapo, they're coming to kill you, people will react violently. If this is a surprise to you, it is because you're stupid or you're not paying attention or both. And it just so happens that a lot of the people that are currently out whining and complaining, and they're very, very upset, and they're all terrified. Oh, man, people should be terrified right now. Yeah, this is terrifying. Touch grass. And if it's very snowy outside, pull up a picture of grass on your screen and just stare at it for a while. Because a lot of this stuff, a lot of it's theater. No, really.
There's smoke grenades that initially came out. I know the smell of smoke.
A lot of it's theater. Oh, wait. What was that? Oh, for the audio listener to the podcast. Well, that's just a guy at a protest in his, for the left, in his wheelchair. Getting out,
I know the smell of smoke.
Bending down, something that historically those in wheelchairs are not really able to get down on their, knees, hips, do some, athletic bending over squat style stuff. Picks up something off the ground and just gets right back in. Wow.
Not sure what just happened.
It's a miracle. Take up thy bed and walk, my good protester, apparently. Good, exciting stuff. Incredible. Thrills and chills. There are also individuals like Dr. Kristen Lyerly, who again have taken this, that they're emboldened now, and has posted, I'm hearing that ICE has booked over 100 rooms at a Milwaukee hotel I'm not going to list. Then she says, buckle up, Wisconsin. She's since deleted this because, again, doxing federal officials. You are encouraging violence. As Ben Shapiro said in the last couple of days, you've given a permission structure to it. As Will Cain made very, very clear and appropriate, you encourage this kind of action and then come out pretending to be surprised at the result. The best breakdown of this, though, and I do want to get to this and play this for you in full. This is over on Fox. I appreciate it. It's from Joey Jones, I believe.
There's a couple of things. Number one, the Second Amendment is a right. I'm not a Second Amendment absolutist. You have the right to carry a weapon to defend yourself, not the privilege. It is a right. Those rights come with restrictions. I think you would understand that more than anyone at this table. One of those restrictions is you have to have your ID and your permit on you. We don't know. Current reports are he didn't have either one of those on, at which point he's not carrying legally. But number two, even beyond that, with the right to carry a firearm comes the responsibility to do it correctly and to do it with foresight and to do it understanding the situation you're walking into and what could happen once you get there. Just about every state offers a class on that. And if you carry your firearm, you should take that class. And if your state charges you for it, you should go protest for that class to be taxpayer funded because it is a right. So that's important. We can talk about policy all day long. There's only one person in this world that could have absolutely prevented Alex Pretty from getting shot that day, and it's Alex Pretty. That doesn't mean I think he should have been shot. I don't think it was necessary whatsoever to shoot Alex Pretty to save a life. But I get to watch that incident from behind Alex Pretty, not as one of the arresting officers and not as potentially the person that I believe from looking at the video did shoot him. Why does he have 10 rounds in him? Because if you have to shoot anybody once, you better shoot them enough to kill them, because if you're shooting somebody, you think they're trying to kill you. Every police officer in this country is taught that. If you want to change that, go lobby to have it changed. Why?
That is correct. Entirely correct. It's entirely correct. The reason it is entirely correct is it makes a couple of things clear. Everyone playing armchair Monday morning quarterback. Very easy for us to do, to sit here now on Monday and say, well, let's break it down, play by play, and just, we're going to dive in and take a look at that. Real life's not like that. It's not. When you're in the moment, this is why putting yourselves in these situations is a bad thing. This is why, by the way, when the officer shows up to your window at a traffic stop and says license and registration, theoretically, one wouldn't hide their license and registration in a hip holster and be like, I got it right here. Because there are enough traffic stops that go wrong that it can create a situation in which the officer might react in a perceived threat environment. It's the truth, and it has happened before. Now, there are some people who decided to take this and call for things that are just nonsensical. So Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, decided that she was going to get extra stupid and say this is like why she wants Kristi Noem to resign. And her reasoning is, well, you guessed it, really, really, really dumb.
Yesterday in Minneapolis, federal immigration agents killed another American citizen in broad daylight. His name was Alex Pretty. He was 37 years old. He was an ICU nurse. Someone whose job was saving lives. Donald Trump's leader of the Department of Homeland Security has proven to be unable and unwilling to follow the law to stop these killings. Kristi Noem has referred to these peaceful protesters as domestic terrorists and lied about the shooting victims being the aggressors.
Now, she does two things there that are, I won't say clever, but they are clever in the political sense. So she semi-quotes Kristi Noem. She says she called these peaceful protesters domestic terrorists. Well, they're not peaceful protesters, as we have seen. They have obstructed. Renee Good was not peaceful. No. She is in the middle of the road. She is violating federal law before she, again, guns it forward. Regardless of whether the wheels are turned or not, when she was told to get out of the vehicle and comply. Nope, gunned it, shot as she hit the officer. Now, in the case of not ICE, but now Border Patrol, here with Alex Pretty, he goes and he obstructs law enforcement and then gets into that situation. Now, that's a different thing from domestic terrorists, but she's able to equate that because the terms are used, so it's not honest, and then suggests that this is some kind of a running routine policy.
She has shown a profound disregard for human life. Kristi Noem has forfeited her right to lead, and I'm calling on her to resign as Secretary of Homeland Security, or Donald Trump to do the right thing and just fire her.
I would have really appreciated this amount of outrage from the left over the death of Lake and Riley. I would have appreciated this amount of outrage from the left over individuals in their jurisdictions who were killed under much more violent and unnecessary circumstances. But Hochul also made the statement that the Department of Homeland Security checked in with her to see if she needed anything at all heading into this major winter storm. And she said, no, we don't need anything. You leave us alone. So that'll show the people in New York affected by the storm. Okay. And now, just as a follow-up, here's Kathy Hochul then telling everyone the next day, hey, here's how you shovel snow.
Pro tips on shoveling from someone from Buffalo who knows. Just push it out of the way, okay? See what I'm doing here? No strain on the back from doing that. Now, when it gets a lot heavier, you're going to have to do a little bit more, but don't lift much. Just do it in smaller bits, okay?
She said shoveling 1.5 inches of snow, maybe.
A little bit. You can do this. Don't do a big pile and fill this up because that can lead to a heart attack. You don't want that.
Okay. I had to play that with Hochul while we had her for a second. Now, I didn't get a chance to say this. Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, he gets out here and from all intents and purposes, it appears that he, makes an interesting kind of a pseudo threat.
What are you going to do if and when a massive ICE operation is launched in Kentucky?
Well, the first thing we have to do is demand that they pull these officers out of all of our cities and that they fully retrain every single one of them. They are operating with aggressive tactics that are not appropriate for law enforcement. They are not following our Constitution and giving people their rights. The idea that they have a memo that says they can just barge into someone's house without a real warrant is
an administrative warrant, according to Supreme Court precedent, is just as viable as a judicial warrant. Stop this.
I guess they missed the day they taught law in law school.
Those of you who have gone to law school have to clear this one up for me. But doesn't law school teach you to read up on precedent and current laws and court cases around those modern laws before you speak about those laws?
It's incredibly concerning. And so what they need to do is a full-on retraining. The way they're going about this, no law enforcement agency in the country would do it, because it not only puts the individual maybe they're trying to apprehend in more danger than they should be in, but it puts everyone else in danger. Think about everyone around each of these operations. It's putting each and every one of our communities in a place where law enforcement is supposed to protect us, and this group is doing the exact opposite. They're putting us in harm's way.
He then goes on to imply that Kentucky might apprehend and arrest ICE officials for carrying out federal immigration law in the state. No, you're not. Again, I'm sorry, guys. There is an entire history of this country in which you can see our interpretation of certain laws and statutes and the relationship between state and federal government, federalism, how that evolves over time. and a huge series of events in which we've already dealt with a ton of this. Getting out there and making political statements because you really want something to be true, whether that's from Kristi Noem's podium or whether that's from Andy Beshear or from Kathy Hochul or from Tim Walz or etc. ad nauseum, you really wanting something to be true doesn't make it true. Just the silliness. Now, again, Klobuchar has said some explicitly stupid things this evening. There's just a lot of really bad decisions going around. But I do want to give a little bit of an update on what we know about the Signal group chat used by those in Minneapolis to communicate, to coordinate, and to encourage the violation of federal law. So, according to the Dallas Express, encrypted Signal chats used by individuals involved in blocking immigration enforcement are under increased scrutiny, following reports indicating they played a role in mobilizing rioters and tracking federal agents before a deadly shooting. So, according to the Signal chat expose released by independent journalist Cam Higbee, who had succeeded in infiltrating some of these groups, these quote-unquote rapid responders, self-described, to oppose ICE in Minneapolis, these encrypted chats were used to share real-time locations of alleged ICE vehicles, summon additional demonstrators, and coordinate activity in designated zones across the city. According to Higbee, one of these locations included the place in which Alex Preddy would obstruct federal law enforcement and then be shot. Now, Vice President, Vance has commented on this. I assume this will be added to a series of investigations kind of down the line. The narrative that is being shared here, there, everywhere, that these are just simple, peaceful protesters that are showing up and they're just recording to see what happens and not actively participating in the obstruction of federal law enforcement in a case that many are, or God forbid, people that are bringing their little children out into sub-zero temperatures or abandoning them in vehicles at the riots, again, turning into riots when someone violates the law, and then pretending as though this is all just normal, good, shucksy doodles, common, decent, legal American behavior. No, it's not. And the longer that we get into this particular encouragement of violence, where an individual doesn't just show up and record law enforcement making arrests, but they get in the law enforcement faces and they're in there, they're using whistles and their horns, and they're trying to get the law enforcement officers away from the individuals that they are arresting, and they're intervening and they're cutting law enforcement officers off, and they're blocking the roads, and they're putting their bodies in between the law enforcement official and the individual who has a judicial or an administrative warrant out for their arrest. That is a very, very, very bad series of decisions that is going to continue escalating, because right now there has yet to be an individual who has reacted in a manner that is actually calming things down. In order to calm things down, the law has to be upheld. Never have you calmed things down, ever, and any record that we have, by not enforcing the law. Nope. So either law is going to be enforced and individuals are going to cooperate, or what you're going to have is a larger altercation in which more people are needlessly hurt based on the atrocious and awful advice of those who know they're not going to be out in it. You go out and you get yourself in a situation where you violate federal law and then sacrifice your safety for an incident that gets completely out of hand within moments. It's not difficult, and yet we see it all the time. Okay. That said, I want to make sure we don't have any specific mail time questions here before we are on our way out for the evening. One question from Rita: why can't we show videos of all of the peaceful ICE arrests? Well, a couple of reasons why. Reason number one is that for many of the ICE arrests which happen without issue, they are done without a lot of people recording the ICE officers carrying out their business. For example, in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis announcing 10,000 arrests with conjunction with federal law enforcement, Florida state and local law enforcement officials, counties, cities, etc. The arrests made, handovers made, no problem. But when you have someone escalating the situation, you get significant issues. Now, also, do I believe that the federal law enforcement should be wearing body cameras for their own protection at this point in safety? Yes, there is funding allocated for this. You can't just snap your fingers and immediately equip everyone with a body camera. Do I think that at this point, absolutely everything needs to be kept for specific record? Absolutely. 100%. So those things said, it being 8:30, a nice little extra half hour here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. We're going to swing out for tonight. Catch you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. It is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.
Since the founding of America 250 years ago, many things have changed. The homes in which we live, the clothes we wear, the jobs we hold, the conveniences we enjoy. But some things never change. The commitment of husband and wife, the importance of passing along our values to our children, the rewards of service to community and country, the faithfulness of God. Some wonder how America has thrived for so long and how we can ensure she continues to. As long as we keep first things first, we've only just begun. America, the beautiful.